Welcome, my name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist here at Fons & Porter. In this Quilting Quickly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put together the blocks in the quilt called Stained Glass. If you'd like to purchase this pattern, please visit our website. We're going to be working with a wonderful group of batiks in this quilt, and we're starting with 10-inch squares. We've got an accent of a navy, a light kind of background fabric, and a wonderful border print that is based purple but has lots of color swirling throughout it. Now from those 10-inch squares, you're going to need to follow your instructions for the number of squares you need to cut from each of those. And then we're going to jump into some of the sewing. Now the techniques here are used so that the pieces are a little bit oversized and we can precisely cut what we need, because if you look at this block, it's very intense. There's a lot going on and we want all the pieces to fit together really wonderfully, barely needing pins, so this is how we're going to get there. One thing you might want to do as you're getting organized and cutting your pieces is use a sticky dot, like I did, to label your pieces. That way, when you get done cutting, you'll be able to identify everything quickly. Now, I've already brought together the pieces that I need to create. What we're going to do here is the outer corner unit, and there are 4 of those that are identical in this block. So from these 4 pieces, this is what we're going to be doing. We're joining together a rectangle and squares, and we're going to be working with 2 of them at a time. So 2 lights, 2 prints in small squares. Join those together like this to create these 2 pieces. I'm going to lay those out there. Magic of television, we're going to have pieces already joined. And I've pressed my seam allowances just in one direction, it doesn't matter which. And then we're going to join those units or subunits together like this. Simple seam, right sides together, so they're mismatched, like this. And sewing a 1/4-inch seam along that edge. I've got one done, and then there is a little trick here, because as we open this up, you know you have seam allowances. You can't press everything in one direction because you're going back on a seam there. What they recommend doing is just make a little clip into the seam allowance there, and it releases it so that you can press one in one direction, one in the opposite direction. It's a little bit different than we're used to, but that way we get a nice finished flat block when we're done. So that little release is just in the center. Now what we're going to be doing, got one already pressed and ready to go, so it's nice and flat. You can see that spot where I released the seam, and you can also see that I took a ruler. Grab my ruler really quick here. Actually, I need one with a 45-degree angle on it. And what we're going to be doing is drawing a diagonal. We're going to line up the 45-degree line here with the bottom edge of our block. We're looking to go through, start at this corner, go through the intersection of our seams here. And so we're putting the ruler on and making a diagonal line here, and then rotate the block and do the exact same thing on the other side. Now think about 45-degree lines. It's along the one edge of your block, into the corner, intersects your 2 seam lines there, and draw a line. Those are going to be our stitching lines. Now we're going to pair this with one of our navy rectangles, right sides together. You're going to stitch along each of those marked lines, and I have one here, stitched along each of those lines. And then once you've got that stitched, you can go in and you're just going to cut down between. You can, you've got a little bit more than a 1/4-inch seam allowance there, but basically what we're going to be doing is just bisecting this block, cut right down between them. The exactness of our 1/4-inch seam allowance, not really a worry at this point. Then as you open that up, you will notice that you're going to have what looks like the outside corner of our stained glass block. And I'm just going to press with my fingernail here so that we don't waste too much time. But you'll notice these are a little bit oversized. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to be using a Deb Tucker trimmer tool, and I'm going to go in and size that block down. Now, we don't want to take all the size off of one side because we want to have this be the dead center of our block. And the instructions will let you know that a 3.5 inch block is what we're going for. So what we need to do is the tool has a solid dot on one corner and its opposite has a half of a dot. And if your block needs to finish on a half, 3.5, you're looking to use this half dot in the upper corner. To me, it's the upper right-hand corner, but you would lay that in this upper corner, follow along the diagonal, and find the very center, and that would tell me then that I need to trim off, let's see, right here, is I'm going to be taking off 2 sides of, or all the way around my block so that I can have a 3.5 inch finished block when I'm all done. So 2 sides, I'm going to rotate. Remember, I'm going for a 3.5 inch finished block. So I'm going to slide that in, make sure it's right on the diagonal, and then I can finish up 2 more sides, and I will have the perfect corner block for my project. No worry about everything being a little bit off or stretched when you're pressing. This makes your block perfect every time. So trim all of those so you have the outside corners of your block. The next piece we're going to be working on are the pieces that are the side kind of units here. So what we're going to start with is the raspberry color that you see here and the light. And what we're going to be doing is putting them right sides together. You're going to use a 1/4 inch seam marker or a ruler, and you want to mark corner to corner your stitching lines, just like you're making triangle squares. If you've done that before, that seems very familiar to you. And it's kind of like making an hourglass block, but not quite. Okay, these are your stitching lines. I've gone in and stitched here on each of those lines, and then we're going to cut down between the 2, and I have 2 that are, here's what you would, once you cut between the 2 and open them up, this is what you're going to have, 1 on each side. So it'll yield you 2 pieces. So then the process, each of these is then matched with the light color yellow here, right sides together. This. Again, we're using that 1/4 inch seam marker, and we're going to, we'll mark on this side because it's a little easier for you to see on the light. If I were to drop this in, we're going to go the other direction across the block, marking, and then stitching. It's so much faster when you can sew this way, isn't it? Magic of TV, we've got one stitched across the block. We're going to cut down between, and that will yield 2 blocks that look like this. 1 on one side, 1 on the other, and I have one split and pressed ready to go like this. But again, you'll see that they're just a little bit oversized, so they need to be trimmed again. So we're going to use the Tucker trimmer one more time. And again, we're going to go to the 3.5 inch mark because each of the units within this is the same size. So we're going to be using the half mark at the top corner here. And I'm going to turn my block so I can use that long diagonal, match it with a long diagonal across the block here. And I need a 3.5 inch block. I'm going to even match up the broken line with where the cream and the raspberry color join together. And that way I know I have it perfectly centered. I can trim 2 sides. This would be a great way if you're working maybe on a team project where more than one person is sewing in for the same quilt top. It will make all of your sewing fit together perfectly because our seaming and our sewing is, as individuals, our fingerprint. So this is one way to make them all kind of uniform. Once you've got those trimmed, Now you've created the units that go here, and then its mirror image is the one that goes here. You'll notice the difference because the light and the raspberry are in different places. So you'll have to, as you make those, the pair goes together. Each of the pairs fits on one side. We've now made everything but the very center. Let's get to the middle now. The last portion we need to work with is the turquoise in the center and the triangles of blue on the outside. So we're starting with a square like this for the center, and then we're going to be taking the navy blue pieces, marking them diagonally or splicing them on the diagonal, and it would be just a simple drop in a ruler and cut them corner to corner. The nice part about using Batiks for this is they're very stable, so your bias edge isn't going to stretch much. I have some already started here as in the piecing. So you can see that these are placed along on top, right sides together with the turquoise center, one on each side, 1/4 inch seam up each side. Press your seam allowances to open and out to the edge here. Then we're going to stitch one on each side, and I'm going to quickly stitch those on so that I can show you how to use the last tool that we have here, and it's a trimmer to make that center the perfect size. And these can be kind of blocks that are a little bit tricky to create because there's a math that's a little bit wonky. So we oversize them and make them easy to trim down and get that perfect square, or square, a diamond square, square and a square, however you want to call it. And one on the other side. Now when you're putting these on, you just want to center them. You can fold to double check to get it close to the center, but because we're going to be trimming them, close will count. So we just need to get down, yeah. A needle unthreaded, so we need to thread back here. This is where I used to bring my kids in and say, do you remember how to thread a sewing machine? And they would all get excited because they would love to follow along and learn to thread the sewing machine when they were little. Okay. And sew down this last side, and then we will get the trimming tool out and get it ready to finish off. And then we'll have the last of the 3 components that go into stained glass. Fun part about batik is it presses really nice, even just with your fingernail. And my little spider block off the side here. Now we have a tool that creates a perfect diamond square, and it's laid out so that you can slide the tool over, and there's little hash marks. I know it's hard for the camera to pick up, but hash marks that go right into the corners of our diamond square, letting us know exactly where to trim so that we can come in and have an exact 1/4 inch seam along all 4 sides. There's nothing better than to have the block perfected so that when we sit down to put everything together, you can almost put it together without a pin. My favorite kind of assembly, quick. So we have then the center portion of stained glass. Add some simple sashing, navy blue cornerstones, and an inner and an outer border, and you have stained glass. Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to see more of our video tutorials, please visit our website.